just want to kick things off though, Peter. Okay, so let's say we have someone in the audience here who does not spend all night yet on Discord, doesn't know what the heck this whole Web3, NFT, DAO, DeFi, Metaverse thing is. They know Facebook changed their name to Meta, but that's about it. What are we talking about here? What is all this stuff? What's the quick overview on Web3, NFTs, DeFi, and the Metaverse, and which is which?
Yeah, it's a good question because there is no one definition for a lot of these things. But David, if you don't mind, I'm going to even step back a little bit further and then get into that.
Perfect.
Which is, there's so much discussion of Web3 and NFTs and DAOs and all that, and we're going to get into that. And hopefully by the end of this, people out there will have an understanding sufficiently deep where they can then decide how deep they want to go. But the one thing I would say to everybody out there, no matter what role you have in media, entertainment, and tech, and I say this all the time, even apart from Web3, is that it's really critical to have an understanding, at least a general understanding of the world out there, which is very much tech-driven and impacts everybody, whether you are a technologist, whether you're a marketing person, an artist, a movie producer, video producer, whatever it may be, games developer. And so the things that we're talking about today are really important for you to at least ground yourself in the vocabulary of, and then start following it, because these are all topics and issues and language that is here with us today. But I would also caution, like you did already, David, that we're in the very early days of what it means to be in the full vision of the metaverse, but also in Web 3.0 and NFTs and DAOs. And so it is very much the Wild West. And we'll get into it deeper, while I'm a tremendous believer in the power of Web 3.0 and decentralization and NFTs and DAOs, it is definitely buyer beware, and people be careful out there, because there is a lot of that. Just like you said in Web 1.0, when things started, there is a land grab, a cash grab, there's all of that. So I really urge people to, before you make investments or things like that, just take a step back, do some research, think about it, all that. But just really quickly, so do you want to start with the metaverse or Web3, or how would you like?
Well, I just will say, and on that point, that is, good advice. This is something where you do want to do your own research, maybe unlike some other things in the news, and none of this is financial advice, as they say. But yeah, let's start with, okay, so everyone knows Facebook changed their name to Meta. Yeah. All the big corporates were focusing on the metaverse, last year. What is the metaverse anyway?
Well, so the metaverse, look, like I said, there's different kind of flavors of the metaverse. The full metaverse is Ready Player One, fully immersive, the Oculus driven, that sort of thing, where you're fully immersed and you are, your presence is in a fully virtual world. And in that virtual world, you can choose to decide who you are, what you look like, what you do, who your friends are, what your work is, all of these kinds of things. So it's essentially, it's just a purely virtual, fully immersive world. Like that. So that is the full vision of what the metaverse will be. And that's really what Zuckerberg and Facebook/Meta is talking about. And we can get into some of the issues just related to that company if that's of interest. But we are already, and I think this is important for people to understand, we're already very metaversian in terms of how we lead our lives, because what we're doing today is an early flavor of the metaverse where it's digital. We're not physically present with one another. When you start talking about like being on TikTok all day, or, you think about the virtual digital life versus your physical, bodily life, right? And we are now already spending, I would say the mass majority of people who are probably watching there in the audience, we're spending more of our time now in the digital world than we are, in the physical world, whether we're at our laptops, whether we're immersed in games. I mean, certainly the most immersive things right now that already have been close to the metaverse are, esports and games and that world of, Fortnite and things like that. But so that's I think it's important for people to understand that we are already well on our way, and this is a reality. And then there's all the positives and negatives that come from that, including what that means for all of our lives, how we interact with each other, how we entertain each other, how we produce content, how we develop content, how we monetize it. So I think that's kind of a grounding level of what it is.
And I loved how you talked about in one of your newsletters how Burbank's own, Disney is sort of the offline, has been for decades, the offline equivalent of the metaverse with Disneyland, Walt Disney World. It's an immersive world, and they're
absolutely. I think that's right. When you look at, it's not as if immersive experiences, life out there is immersive, right? So, but Disney really did, to your point, 60 years ago, 70 years ago now, when they created Disneyland, it's like a physical metaverse. You're in a fully immersive environment that's an artificially created environment. And so, one of the things I mentioned in one of my recent newsletters was that I think Disney is poised for greatness in the metaverse because it can take that experience, but also take all of its great intellectual property, its characters, Star Wars, Pixar's, Disney princesses, and bring them into the metaverse and develop whole worlds around them that have monetization paths every step of the way, but also then tie in the metaverse into the physical verse, the real world, and cross-pollinate against that. So every step of the way, a company like Disney can be in your life, which is exactly what they want to do, of course.
And we've already seen, of course, some of the big giants in the entertainment world, including in Burbank, get into NFTs, in sort of the, a lot of the ways that we've seen the early incarnations of NFTs have been collectibles and such. But so we talked about the metaverse a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about NFTs for someone who's a total beginner. Right. I just heard about them all the time. You can't go anywhere. It's some people are really annoyed. You can't stop, hearing about NFTs. What are they anyway for someone who's new to them?
Okay, so an NFT stands for non-fungible token. And so non-fungible means that no two are the same. A fungible, of course, like a Bitcoin, which is a currency that sits on the blockchain. Bitcoin is fungible because each unit of Bitcoin is the same as another unit of Bitcoin. So non-fungible means that it's unique. But all it is that think of an NFT as data, an asset or value of some kind that's on the blockchain that has a proof of ownership and authenticity that is ascribed to it and locked in on the blockchain. And that's the big benefit of it is now there's no, arguably there's no chance of somebody coming in and breaching that tying of ownership to the owner of that NFT. So it's like fully secure. So in a monetary transaction, let's say that you're an artist or a movie studio that sells something via an NFT, and then the buyer of that will have a proof of ownership of whatever they buy. And then the monetization, like to any of the participants who are in the movie or something like that, it will be directly that kind of payout to those characters or those people involved in the project will be paid directly by the blockchain. And there's no means for middle people to come in and somehow take a piece of what is supposed to be coming to you. That's the kind of the theory of what the NFT is.
So you've got the theory, and then you've got the amazing reality where a JPEG of a bored ape can be worth hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And of course you have people collecting things for the collectible interest, but you have people sort of doing trying to speculate, invest, make lots of money. You have all this talk about how we'll have NFTs, and already we're seeing that provide access and real world benefits and all sorts of use cases we'll get into in a little bit. But just bringing everyone on the same page here, DeFi, decentralized finance, quick overview, and then DAOs for people new to that.
So just going back to NFTs a little bit, I'm sure most of you have heard of, perhaps many of you think of NFTs as just being, like you said, a JPEG or an image of some kind. And so Beeple is the most famous one because it was one of the first big NFT sales, and it was a composition of many different digital images brought together, and it's sold, but overall it's a digital NFT, and so it's an image that was sold for $69 million, I think, by Christie's. And so, you know, most people think, are you kidding me? You know, this is just an image sold for $69 million. What's going on with that? And I think the big aha moment for me came when, you know, because I thought that, you know, initially, and, you know, you and I were talking, I've really dug deep in the past several months to really understand and get deeper and deeper and deeper. But my big aha moment was when I started thinking and really understanding the philosophy of Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks. And those are images, but they're more than that. They want to be and are communities. So think of a NFT as being a community of interest, where it is your membership into the community is limited by the NFT. So let's say, I think Bored Ape Yacht Club was something like 10,000 or, you know, something like that.
Right, magic number.
And so you buy into that community. There's only 10,000 memberships available. Each of those 10,000 get a separate, slightly differentiated image. But ultimately, that community has ways to build and promote the Bored Ape Yacht Club. So their interest is to build an economy, essentially. That community is building an economy that they hope to create greater value for themselves. And that can mean that, like, you know, ultimately, as the price of Bored Ape Yacht of each individual token or NFT goes up, then they can build actual, like, they can license the intellectual property of the Bored Ape for movies, for television series, and generate income that way. They can create an actual physical club or a yacht, and where they buy it and only they can be on it, something like that. So think of these things as being capable of being communities if done right. Now, there's a lot of hype around that, where is Bored Ape Yacht Club, is that really what they're all about? I don't know. I mean, I assume the answer is yes. Or CryptoPunks, you know, this is probably the, you know, the A grade of, or the, you know, OG of the NFTs, right? So it remains to be seen how they expand. One piece that's important before I move on to that is that as a member, you have an opportunity to resell that membership too. And that's kind of via a smart contract that sits on the blockchain. And that's one of the you know, the benefits of being an original member, because the value goes up because others want to be part of this limited club. And as the value goes up, it can go up substantially. So what somebody bought for a couple $100 now is being sold for, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into that membership. Now, for this crowd of media and entertainment, while it is early, and I am certainly buyer beware, I absolutely believe NFTs are here to stay. And the great benefit for me is what I touched upon, which is community. So if you're an artist, if you're a movie producer, you have an ability now to, another source of potential financing for you to fund your art, to fund your music. And this community that you define, like how many people could be part of it and pay into it, then these members of the community, because they like your work and they want to foster creativity, will promote you, which is a new business model. And you even have the opportunity to share with your fans, share with your community, some of the monetization that comes from that. So if they're out there like supporting your craft, promoting your work, allowing you to create new things, expanding your profile, it's a really cool thing from my perspective that you can give back by giving them a share of the upside that they help create. So that's an economy that's created by your audience. And that applies whether it's a musician or a brand or a, you know, film producer, a new source of income for them where they can participate. So that's that. Now on DAOs, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, it's different than an NFT. It's a coming together of an unlimited number of people across the internet through the blockchain who contribute to a specific cause. So one of the most famous ones that you and I were talking about, and there's a funny anecdote there, was a DAO came in to try to purchase a copy of the US Constitution. And rather than having one person come in and pay whatever the millions of dollars to come in, you could have an unlimited number of people from around the world contribute $100 and try to beat the big whale out there who's trying to buy a copy of the Constitution. So decentralized autonomous organizations are, there's no hierarchical structure. It's a flat organization. Certain rules are baked into smart contracts by which they're governed, and those rules are set to be what they say immutable. So once they're locked in, you as a member of that DAO should feel secure that they will never change. You understand what they are, and it can be to buy something, it can be to promote a cause. So I'll give you a really interesting one, like their Maroon 5, the band, they created a DAO to help raise money to support initiatives that support causes that fight climate change. So there's all kinds of things. There's purely commercial, buying something, buying a valuable thing. Imagine, look, conceptually, a DAO could raise so much capital that they come in and buy Disney, the Disney company. That is not beyond the pale where something like that happens. Then the question is, what will the buyer do with it? Because you don't have a hierarchical structure. So if somebody comes and buys a sports team or something like that, which people are talking about, by the way, then who governs what happens to Disney or that sport team or whatever it is you buy? But that's a DAO. But let's get back to the Constitution, because you have a personal experience there, David, where this was a real thing. A DAO was created and you were a participant in it. So why don't you tell everybody?
Yeah, one of the fun things about Web3 is, it often rewards people who jump in and get their hands wet, get their feet wet. I just put $25 in that Constitution DAO bid. I was a Gov major, and ended up getting $600 back because people were trading the people token, as they call it. Even though the Sotheby's, auction was won by the sort of arch enemy of cryptocurrency, Ken Griffin of Citadel, there was so much buzz around it that it meant that the token associated was valuable. And then you also saw people who got Ethereum domain names, also get rewarded with airdrops. And it's fascinating. I mean, definitely a reason why people get so interested in it is, there's been a lot of money going around in crypto, and it's been an interesting time, certainly for the markets lately, and certainly for the Bitcoin maxis and the Ethereum investors. Of course, people in NFT land, though, it seems it's been a bit more protected because some are indeed in it for the art, not just investing, and it's still going strong here, no matter what the markets may be looking like. But before we dive in too much more, I want to just close out our grand tour of things here. We've talked about NFTs, we've talked about DAOs, and decentralized finance is broader, includes a lot of things which are kind of hard to get your mind around. For an early stage discussion on all this, we'll have to get into that more later. But once you get into NFTs, you get pulled into these other areas. And we talked about the metaverse. So that kind of, gives us the framework here for Web3 more broadly. And how do you define that? Is it as simple as just saying it's, sort of decentralized, the power of the people?
Well, look, again, remember, these are all conceptual. These are all what they are meant to do, and then it's a question of how they play out, where the positive and negatives. And I do hope we talk about that a little bit too, because we already touched upon it, but there's a lot to dig deeply on. I mean, think about it this way: Web 2.0 is mostly thought of as you have has developed these mega middlemen, where you have an Apple, when you have the App Store, that if you're a developer or a creator and you want to find your audience, you almost have to go to the App Store, which takes 30% or up to 30% of your share. So you have the value that you've created, 30% of that is immediately taken off the top and given to Apple. So it's a middle person. You have Facebook that if you post some content on that, how much do you really get from a monetization standpoint? Yes, you can build your audience there, but you have this platform that's in between your audience. They help you find it, but that's what Web 2.0 is. You have YouTube where, many people are building their audiences, but YouTube is taking 45% of 45 cents of every dollar that you create with your content. And so that's what Web 2.0 is. Web 3.0, decentralized, rips out those middlemen. And so you have this concept of being able to directly find an audience, communicate with them. And the most obvious thing is you built a social following. So you built a brand already of some kind. And by the way, if you're a musician or a creator and you have 20 people who follow you, nonetheless, you built an audience of some kind. They are passionate about your work. So you have a way to communicate with them somehow. And now you can develop this relationship where your content doesn't need to go through the middleman to find them. You can go direct. They can support you directly with whatever business model you want. It doesn't have to be ad supported anymore. Now it can be subscriptions. It can be tip jars. It can be, whatever you want to define it as being. It can be in the form of an NFT where you pay for a exclusive membership into a fan club that is limited to whatever number you want it to be, like 1,000. And maybe those 1,000, as an example, if you're a musician, they get access to songs that others don't get. They get experiences with you that others don't get. And then decentralization with Web 3.0, you, the audience, because you're in this direct relationship, will promote and do the marketing for the creator. And then ultimately, like I said, a really cool part of Web 3.0 is that the audience can creates an economy that's around the creator, and you, the audience, get to potentially share, if the creator wants you to, in the earnings that are developed by that economy, in the value that's created. I think that's really amazing. We're in the very early stages of it, but I'm very bullish on the possibilities of that direct connection in this community and this economy that's created around it and the art that's developed around it. And you mentioned one of my newsletters I think it was a couple days ago, and if people want to check it out, you can, if somebody can put it on the chat, just what Creative Media is my website, you can find the newsletters there. But I think 2 days ago, that particular newsletter is about Web 3.0 is a real threat to YouTube. And it really is, because if you look at let's say 90% of YouTube's ad dollars are generated by the top 5% of creators, let's say, or even top 10% of creators. If only a fraction of those 10% leave YouTube behind because they've already established their audience and they establish a direct relationship through Web 3.0 tools that we're talking about, that's an immediate substantial hit off YouTube's revenues and earnings. So it is a real threat to Web 3.0. Web 3.0 is to YouTube. It will take time, but these are real changes. And if for those of you who do want to learn more and dig a little bit more deeply, I do a lot of writing and speaking. I have some great guests who talk about these issues.
You've had some fascinating podcasts you've done. I encourage people to check them out. So, you mentioned a little bit, how you wanted to get into the skeptics, and frankly, there's a lot of reason to be skeptical and even, rightfully cautious, afraid of some of the scams out there. I do have a family member who, keeps sending me links and stories, about, NFTs are just one big scam. It's a big Ponzi scheme. It's all this stuff. Is that true? And to the extent it is, how can people, be careful? I mean, This isn't all Ponzi scheme. This isn't all scam, right? But it is the Wild West.
No, it's definitely the Wild West. And I think it's best, think about it this way. One of the most, one of the biggest voices in the world of Web 3.0 and NFTs is a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. He goes by Gary V. And Gary V's like, he's almost a god to the faithful out there who fall over every word. I was listening to a podcast just yesterday about that was from Gary V. Even this guy who's the disciple who's driving this, this narrative, he says that up to 99%, if he were a betting man, 99% of NFTs that are currently the top ones on OpenSea, which is the big platform, will fail. They will fail. So if you want like the cautionary tale, even this man who is such a believer in NFTs is saying that 99% of these will fail. So certainly a number of these are driven purely by greed, by pumping and dumping, as they say, where there's a hell of a lot of hype out there where influencers are hired to go promote this massive quantity of NFTs that are being sold. Every day there's another big one that's being sold by somebody, and they're hyped by these influencers. And so people get into a frenzy. They don't want to miss out. It's the whole FOMO effect. That's what's being played off of. And that's where the numbers go up radically. And unfortunately, like in any new form of technology or anything, or making money, you're going to have a lot of people who lose a ton of money on it. So there is a lot of scamming going on, and I urge you to be careful. Nonetheless, like I said, fundamentally, I believe in the promise of Web 3.0 and NFTs and DAOs. And so they are here to stay, I believe. And so, and I've kind of listed or identified what I think is the most exciting part of it. One thing, if you don't mind, like maybe a couple of the other downside or risks that are certainly worth considering. When we think about decentralization, another point that people make, and I think it's a fair one. Another good person to check out, by the way, is Scott Galloway, who goes by Prof G. He has a great podcast, my favorite podcast out there. Really smart, NYU professor, hilarious, crusty, but really smart, and you'll learn a lot from him. Prof G show, check it out. But when you think about decentralization, you think power to the people. You mentioned that, David. Well, the people most of the big winners in Web 3.0 so far have been the mega tech people who have already made a ton of money in their worlds. And so they moved on to Web 3.0 to really hype it up. And there's, like I said, it's worth hype, but to really hype it up and score massive amounts of dollars and then get out themselves. And so is it really power to the people yet? The big wins so far are in the hands of a few, that relative few. So that's part of it. There is very little, essentially no regulation when it comes to Web 3.0. One of the big promises of the blockchain, of course, is like fully secure, can't be hacked, all that kinds of thing. But there are ways to still be vulnerable to thieves out there. So there's phishing scams that go on. So, if somebody gets your hash, then they can break into your wallet and your digital wallet and take over your NFT. So there's the meta thing that I think is also worth talking about, whether it's the metaverse or this, and I see it with a lot of young people in particular, not just, I don't want to just, but I worry about the fact that everybody is so hyped up by all of this that they're spending every hour of their day going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, fear of missing out, putting their money into it and not getting outside into the world. And I think that there is a real risk of just chasing the dollar here, where, again, you got to be very careful. I'm not against chasing a dollar, but you have to be very careful about like what it's doing to your life as well. So I think those are some negatives that we as a society and just as our individual lives step back a second. That's my caution to everybody, including myself, because you can be podcast after podcast after podcast.
Totally. I mean, and one of the questions we got from the audience really speaks to that. They asked about Discord, and that is where you can spend all hours of the night and day, lost, if you want to get whitelisted to get some new NFTs, increasingly there are so many, steps to get, on the list. As someone compared it to the Squid Games. I mean, Squid Game is just totally a huge time suck. Discord. Do you recommend if people are new to NFTs, they dive in, fully to NFT Twitter and get on Discord, or do you recommend a more hands-off approach? How should people get their feet up?
Look, I'll be presumptuous of offering any advice in terms of how much time anybody should spend with whatever they're passionate about, because it's exciting. Look, this is here to stay. I love transformation. I love to try to be on the bleeding edge of where things are going. And I've been fortunate to do that throughout my career. I believe in this space cautiously. I've gone deeper and deeper, but I have to check myself. My advice to everybody out there is to start with some good focused source resources out there, like Scott Galloway, Prof G, not to advertise myself, but my content is free. I have a lot of great content because I have a lot of great guests across, whether it's movies, games, music, and then talking about Web 3.0 and stuff. So you should check that out. I think that you'll get out a lot of, and a shameless plug, my Fearless Media podcast. So that's on all podcast networks. You'll be able to find it. I think those are good ones. Certainly Gary V, if you want to hear that guy's thoughts, check out Gary V and you'll be able to find him very easily. There's a guy named Aaron Maney who goes by the handle Mr. Who's the Boss, who has almost 10 million subscribers on YouTube. It's all free content and he's really thoughtful. So I think he's good. And so I would start with reading, but like a couple things, read every day, a few things. You don't have to spend a lot of time there. Walk your dogs, podcasts. It's a good way to go. These podcasts are really, it's amazing how much good stuff out there. One of the crypto podcasts I listen to is called Crypto. That's the podcast name. I think that's a good one. So I think that if you start with a combination of reading some smart newsletters, listening to some smart podcasts, you'll start learning pretty fast. And then you start getting, you have enough background to be able to have your own barometer of skepticism or positivity about each individual thing. Understand what the motivations are for whatever it is that you're buying into. I want to throw out two projects that are interesting in that regard because they're media projects, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So just the other day, Mila Kunis, everybody knows Mila Kunis, she just raised, I forgot how much money it was, for her project called Stoner Cats. Stoner Cats. Now, Stoner Cats is an animation series that is sold by an NFT. So it's a membership. You have to buy into the Stoner Cats community via an NFT to be able to see the content, to be able to watch the animated series. And where they take that from there, I don't know. So that's an example of Stoner Cats buying into the NFT. You're supporting the creators, Mila Kunis and whoever's else involved, creating this animated series. They're financing it that way. And you, the audience, that's the exclusive audience. Now, of course, they're making a lot of money through that process. But I believe what they're going to be doing is kind of what I mentioned. Stoner Cats, you have this initial manifestation through a web series, but ultimately, if the intellectual property gets valuable, then it can be licensed for merchandise, et cetera, and the members of the community will get a share of that. So it will increase in value, and you as the member of the community can then resell and gain the value of all of that. So if you buy for $100 and sell it for $10,000, you get all the upside, but Mila Kunis and crew get a continuing 2.5% share of every resale. So Stoner Cats is, and that's, Stoner, S-T-O-N-E-R, worth checking out. Super Doge is another one where Super D-O-G-E. Super Doge takes a kind of a similar approach, but slightly different. It's also an animated series. It started off as what they call a meme coin. So there's a lot of, you have Dogecoin, these are all different cryptocurrencies. People can make them up. And then if the community if you get enough community buzz, then it rises in value. So anyhow, Super Doge was one of those. It started as a meme coin, but now they're getting into creating an animated series, Super Doge, like it's a superhero about crypto. And it's an animated series, and you have real Disney, like experienced production behind it, Disney creators behind it. You have like real animators who are behind this, doing this. This meme coin is trying to convert itself into becoming the Marvel of cryptocurrency. And so create value in intellectual property. Now, is that authentic? Is that really what they're trying to do? Or is it just part of the story so that the meme coin can go beyond meme status and have staying power? We don't know, but they're making their content available for free differently than Stoner Cats. But the reason why for them, they want to have as broad of like passion around the world to support the ultimate, the coin ultimately, and being part of that, the bought in community. So those are some interesting ones.
That's fascinating. And we've gotten some questions in the audience chat here. People are asking more on the gaming side and also virtual real estate about a Decentraland and Sandbox. Would you think it's sustainable? Can we dig a little deeper? I guess, I don't know if they meant pun intended, dig into the sandbox, but.
Well, it's hard for me. I've gone pretty deep when it comes to like the intellectual property, the music, and I believe what I do before I dig into that. Just one small thing on the music side. Everybody's listening. I think most of you know, like Dylan's just sold his catalog for hundreds of millions of dollars. Neil Young sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. These are big stories where private equity, the big banks are coming in, buying the rights, the copyrights to masters and compositions, so they can then build the value in them and take the value. So they're paying huge paychecks. One thing about NFTs I don't want to forget is that power to the people. Now you can actually have fans buy the catalogs and beat the big guys, beat the private equity, and by micro investing $100. And if you get enough people, you can win and buy the catalog, and you can get an ongoing share of the royalties that are generated by that. I just wanted to mention that. And one last company, and then I'll move to that question. Check out Koji, K-O-J-I. They are supporting the creator economy. So a lot of you influencers and people out there who have a base with all these different applications all built into one. It's almost like a super app. And they also have NFT Web 3.0 tools that they just launched, and they just raised $20 million that are announced yesterday with a who's who. So Koji is K-O-J-I. Check them out. I think they're really cool. Now to Decentraland and virtual real estate. I gotta say, I have a hard time with this one, but that's my knee-jerk reaction without digging in too deeply. The story that anybody can create a virtual land, anybody. And I think The Sims was essentially a virtual land, right? 10, 15 years ago. So anybody can create that. So it's ultimately, you see people who are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a plot of a virtual digital plot within a virtual environment that has a name, like Decentraland's the most well-known right now, the most notorious. And so just like in any city, there's the most valuable real estate within that city. So the numbers are massive going into Decentraland if you want to have a big space in a central place. And you have major brands now, Burberry's or whoever they may be, Victoria's Secret, who are actually buying in and having their retail environments, and it's great marketing for them. And then they can sell their digital Burberry's, their digital Victoria's Secrets, or whatever it may be. So the question of value, Decentraland is the most important one today. How does it sustain that in the minds of everybody that it is the place to be in the metaverse? That's the question. Today it is. So what can Decentraland do to maintain that pole position so that the value that you bought into doesn't just get sucked away when somebody else like you create, you, David, if you wanted to create another virtual land and for some reason you were able to capture the fancy of everybody and they go to yours, then Decentraland goes by the wayside. It may be just enough that it's the first, the biggest, and so everybody starts gathering there. But that's the trick. So while the knee-jerk reaction is to disregard it because, come on, guys, it's virtual real estate. At the same time, smart people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into that. Brands are buying into it. And perhaps the more people buy into it, then it just becomes a reality, just like anything else.
Someone mentioned in the chat, Adidas, made a storefront there because they're following the eyeballs. It's definitely interesting. You see, totally. Why do brands get into Web3? Is it to actually make money directly? Is it a marketing ploy to associate their brand, with what's hot, what's culturally relevant right now? I mean, if we have someone in the audience here who's in the media and entertainment space, besides the examples you listed, what other resources would you say, definitely following your podcast, but to keep up with, both what, best practices are and what to avoid? I mean, we've seen, some pushback by, OGs in the NFT space when celebrities get in and it's seen as, oh, they just buy their CryptoPunk, they just buy their Bored Ape, the day before, and they say, oh, I'm into NFTs, and then they launch their project, the next day, and it's seen as a cash grab, and then who knows, what happens with their collection, which is on some random platform that people forget about. What do you see as the big pitfalls, and how can people keep up with the latest and greatest approaches for leveraging NFTs and Web3 and media and entertainment?
Well, I think that there's in the media side, kind of traditional media, which means streaming and all that, and still music, digital and all that. I actually do believe that Variety does a pretty good job at a kind of as a, if you follow and just read up, like every day you skim certain things like Variety or Music Business Worldwide, I think it's called, MBW, Music Business Worldwide. That's a great one in the music industry. They talk about like the big developments when it comes to an artist or a creator or a studio that's launching an NFT project, getting into Web 3.0. So if you skim some of these things, sprinkle in a couple of podcasts, check out newsletters. And, I tweet out a lot of the things I find interesting. So again, shameless plug, but if you follow me on Twitter, you'll have a good smattering of stuff, at Csathy, at PCSATHY, or my LinkedIn, you'll find a lot of stuff. I try to curate for you to make it easy. I want to go back to like your question about marketing and why would the brands go into this world? What are they seeking? They're seeking absolutely getting to where the audience is, the audience they want the young audience. They don't care about old guys like me. They want the audience. They want, and young people in particular are immersed in games and esports and all these kinds of things, and getting into Decentraland and getting heavily into crypto and all of that for understandable reasons. And so finding an audience, the pure marketing power of being there, as being part of it, of course, you want to be there just for the eyeballs. But the wild thing is that digital goods are becoming a very big deal. Just like in games, they have been for a long time. You have a microtransaction while you're playing a game. It may have been free to play, but then you have microtransaction to get a shield or a sword or an outfit or something like that. Same thing applies in the metaverse. You go into the virtual Burberry store and you buy something that's real money out of pocket so that you can carry your Burberry or wear your Burberry. And people do it for various reasons. They do it for status. They do it to You know, why do people do anything they want? If you live your life more and more in the metaverse, the things you see out there in the real world of driving the biggest car, driving a Maserati, you know, there's a lot of status stuff that goes on. That's being brought into the metaverse, absolutely. Now, from the creator standpoint of getting into the NFT world and thinking about Web 3.0, if you have any audience, you're going to be approached by somebody. And it's the same cautionary tale that I say to everybody who's an audience member who's thinking about investing. And whether you do or not, you have to know about this stuff. But for the creators, you need to know this stuff too, so that you're not taken advantage of. Because you will get, especially if you have a big audience, the money that comes to you, that's promised to you, will be substantial. And there's a lot of money grabs out there for sure. Just money grabs for money grabs sake. Here's a cautionary tale. And I'm not saying Ozzy was doing a money grab. I don't know, but Ozzy Osbourne just recently had, it was creating an NFT of digital bats. And I think they were all, it was an NFT, so each was differentiated. Well, something about the marketing of that NFT, the link was wrong. And so some nefarious forces took the wrong link and somehow promoted that and sucked and essentially stole money from people who thought they were buying the real NFT when they weren't. So there was a massive scam there, and there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So that's my cautionary tale, not only to everybody out there, but if you're a creator or a big star or whoever, you have to know enough and be represented by smart people and know who you're dealing with before you get into any of this kind of stuff, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and you definitely have to be aware. It's still the Wild West, and we'll all be seeing if more regulation, more clarity comes around DAOs and their legal issues. And there's a great Twitter thread yesterday about just all the unanswered questions around DAOs and frankly all the legal exposures that you can have. Would they be treated as a general partnership and anyone could be sued? I mean, all these questions. So definitely buyer beware, seller beware, airdrop recipient beware. A lot of money to be made, a lot of problems out there too. We have a question talks about the transition from to the ad-supported Web 2 world, YouTube and everything, to the decentralized Web 3 world. They're saying, sure, YouTube takes a huge cut of artist revenue, and if you're Taylor Swift, you want 100%, that's great. But if you want to do it on your own, you have to support the infrastructure. Is it someone needs to make money on ads to support all this infrastructure? I mean, it kind of gets to the point. I mean, sure, a lot of people in Web3, some are libertarian idealists, thinking it's great, throw out all the old players and start from scratch, but is that utopian world fraught with problems? I mean, is there a benefit to having centralized platforms sometimes that have the resources, the infrastructure, the servers, and do you really want to start from scratch every time?
Yeah, well, first of all, you won't be starting from scratch, right? Because there's going to be a natural progression. And to be clear, while decentralized Web 3.0 sounds great, you still have, if you're mining an NFT or creating an NFT, you need to have a service that actually does the quote unquote mining for you and puts it on the blockchain and all that kind of stuff. And you're paying for a fee for that. You're paying a fee. And by the way, there's massive environmental issues that we haven't touched upon too, just by the massive amount of computational power needed. So there's like that issue too. But, and certainly for the vast majority of people who are finding their audience on YouTube or Facebook or Insta or whatever, it's understandable that, yes, they may not have the option right now to be able to immediately go into Web 3.0 land and create their audience and get sufficient monetization to make up for what they have. But I doubt that those people are making that much money on those Web 2.0 platforms anyhow, because the ad, they're going to get a small amount of dollars because their audiences are smaller, and the massive share that's YouTube's and the others are taking out is a big deal. One more thing. And so if you have 100 followers, let's say you're an artist and you don't have a massive following, well, I don't know, like I haven't done the math, but I think it'd be interesting to see how much are you really making by putting your music out there on YouTube. And if you instead created some kind of super VIP or some kind of Patreon-like thing, but unlike Patreon, your 100 fans get to participate in funding your career, but also getting a piece of the success of it, I bet you're going to make more money in Web 3.0 land doing that. And I think you'll feel better about it. And here's the thing, and I write about this a lot, so I'll be very vocal about this. The ad-driven models of Web 2.0 are causing massive destruction in society, tearing people apart, tearing, polarizing everybody, because it's all about engagement, maximizing engagement, all the things we know. So it sounds great for the content to be free. Well, it's not. And it's all about the algorithms maximizing things. So we go deeper and deeper and divide it. And I think that like Web 3.0, one of the great promises of that is you get away from the ad-driven model into direct support and subscriptions and things like that, that have those kind of externalities. And so it's not happening overnight, but I believe that there's a lot of positivity that comes from that too, because the ad-driven models are going to be seen at some point as being anachronistic.
That's a fascinating point. A lot of talk in Silicon Valley about changing the world. Well, Facebook has changed the world as it for good. I'll say that.
I've been pretty vocal about how I feel about Facebook and Instagram.
And now they're calling themselves Meta to get away from all that. But we're almost out of time.
100%.
I want to make sure we close on another note shortly. So real quick before we get to the final question, a couple questions here on legal issues. And I know you're a long way out from Harvard Law School, not focused on the law right now per se as much, but they're talking about legal issues around DAOs. We have some good questions here just to combine the two. Are things flushed out enough, around DAOs and LLC, and LLCs, being able to contain some of the problems about DAOs that you'd feel comfortable, starting one, operating one? Do you advise, caution on behalf of those interested in DAOs still, or is there enough regulatory clarity yet?
Well, there is certainly not enough regulatory clarity, regulatory clarity. Yes, there's not enough. And things are moving so fast. How does government keep up? Especially when we see our legislators and what the depth of knowledge is in these kinds of issues. So how does that's a fundamental concern of as we go forward, regulation, and we see it in Web 2.0 land. Would I feel comfortable myself? I am exploring some NFT things along the lines of what I've talked about, but I still am not comfortable to pull the trigger today. I support and I'm very positive about them, but there's a lot of, there's a lot of experimentation going on, just like there is in any new technology. And when that's the case, the rules of the game are being established on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. So whenever that's the case, there's risk involved. And like a DAO, I've never participated in a DAO myself. So David, congratulations to you. I'd be curious to hear your experience with it and how you felt about giving your money and participating in that.
It was fun. It was just it all happened in 1 week. We watched the Csathy's live stream and watched it fail. Someone else beat out the DAO because you could see how much money the DAO had to bid on the Constitution. It was all in the public, all in the blockchain, and so someone would come in and bid a bigger amount. So they're definitely disadvantages about being all out there and on the blockchain too. But fun to get involved.
But let me ask you a question. Can I ask you a question about that though? So on that person's question about legal, so before you participated, because I don't know the process, was there some kind of white paper, legal documentation that said, okay, these are the rules, this is how it's done?
Well, I would never want to start a DAO myself, yet. That was just, jumping in and putting money in their treasury, as they call it, to bid.
But,
And,
but did they have a white paper or something?
they had, their site with, they threw it together so quickly. It was kind of something that went viral on Twitter. Who knows what they had? Was it a PDF per se, like you see a lot of these, or what? But it was fun. I got my $25 worth. I would say I'd want to spend a lot more than $25 on lawyers if I were to think about starting a DAO myself. A lot of questions yet to be answered, and you got to be careful out there. But rather than ending on a cautious note, we are out of time. Maybe folks can read more in your predictions for 2022 you put out there in USA Today and newsletters. But real quick, any further thoughts about where we're likely to be by the end of the year? You can't predict on the crypto markets or the stock market maybe, but just in NFTs, are they here to stay? Are we going to sort out some of the Wild West things this year, do you think? What's it going to be like?
Well, it's still going to be Wild West. It's going to be probably wilder and westier than it's been. And so the volume of NFTs and DAOs is, DAOs are such early stages, but I think you will see some, on the NFT side, you're going to see a continuing onslaught of good projects that, if you're a movie producer, where you have an ability now to have an audience, perhaps an underserved niche audience, help you fund the story that otherwise would not reach them. Like, that's cool. I think you're going to start seeing some of that stuff amidst a lot of the noise. On the DAO side, I do think you're going to, you didn't succeed on your constitutional buy, but there really are DAOs organizing to buy sports teams, to buy soccer teams, European football teams. I think in this year, you're going to see some things that will blow your minds. I am getting into the world of NFTs and DAOs buying music rights and partnering with artists in an authentic way there, where you have fans have the ability to support, and rather than have bankers' money coming in, you have the audience coming in and participating in it and being excited about promoting that music and then sharing in the upside. I think that's really, really cool. So I think you're going to start seeing some of that sort of thing. But yeah, yes. And I guess the final thing is, whether you like the concept of it or don't like the concept of it, it is absolutely here to stay. So Web 3.0, it's early Wild West. Decentralization is a real thing. Blockchain is a real thing. There's always going to be security issues like there is any kind of technology, but yes, that's why it's so critical for everybody in whatever role you play in the creator economy and tech or media and entertainment to stay current on this and really educate yourself, at least broadly and generally, so that you're aware of these forces that are going on. Well, we are more than out of time. Peter, okay. Johnny, this has been fantastic. I encourage everyone to follow the Fearless Media podcast. Check out, his creative media and Deep Cuts Media sites as well. Follow him on Twitter. I'm sure we'll have you back again, Peter. You are always amazing. This has been just tremendous. We've had so much audience engagement. I don't think we've had as much at any Burbank Tech Talk in ever a long while. Very appropriate to decentralize things and have the community leave this here.